All right. Hi,
Thank you.
everyone. Welcome. Kiki, welcome. How are you today?
Thanks. I'm doing great. Having a great hour of code. How about yourself?
Good. I mean, it's incredible to see, everything that's happening with Hour of Code, with Computer Science Education Week, all the things that people are doing on Twitter, on social media, which is really exciting, especially for, code.org and for us at Wonder Workshop. It's just such a really cool thing to see.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of excitement around it this year, and it's really neat just to see the happy faces as people try this stuff.
Exactly. And that's what we want. We want to see students happy and enjoying, especially when it comes to coding. So we also want to explain that joining the EdWeb community, our coding and robotics K through 8, comes with a lot of really cool benefits. You get a lot of different invitations to upcoming webinars that'll be happening. And we at Wonder Workshop are actually running the EdWeb coding and robotics community. So we're going to be having webinars pretty much every single month, where we're going to have different guests, different speakers being able to share about wonderful things that are happening in coding. And this is our very first one, and we're excited to have code.org here with us to begin this. You
Thanks
can
for
also
having
access, yeah, thank you. And you can also access recordings of any past webinars. You can join our online discussion forum, and you can even earn a CE certificate for taking a quiz after you watch the video. So you can click on that link at the bottom where it's edweb.net/code. So as I mentioned, when you're done, you're able to take the quiz. You can get a nice CE certificate that you could take and send to your PD offices or department, and they'll be emailed to you for attending. So we're really excited to begin and talk to you about Beyond the Hour of Code implementation for all. And, one of the things that I hear questions being asked the most of when I'm in schools is, what do we do when we are done our hour of code, which is just designated 1 hour, for some schools only one time a year, and how we can, continue on beyond that. So we're really excited to share that. But a little bit about who we are. We're Wonder Workshop. We are the creators of I'm the creator of Dash and Dot Robots. We have our staff that, works and gets to build and play and do all of this. So I get to work with toys all the time. And I have Kiki here from code.org. So we're going to introduce ourselves. So my name's Brian Miller, and I've been in education for 15 years. And my journey has been all over. I worked in higher education. I was a kindergarten teacher. I taught K through 5 computers. And then I was director of educational technology for one of the largest private independent schools in the United States, which is located in Florida, which is where I live. And my journey with coding and robotics began many, many years ago when I started integrating in Legos and trying a bunch of things with my students. But most recently, it's been joining the team at Wonder Workshop, which I've been employed at for almost a year now, which has been a really exciting and fun year, which allows me to travel and work with a lot of different schools. So my role as the educator community manager is to work with teachers, work with schools, help and show them how to integrate Dash and Dot authentically into their classrooms, speak with administration, explain the importance of computer science and coding and why we need to get this into the hands of more students. And beyond that, I speak internationally on connected toys and play at conferences and schools. And you can follow me on Twitter, which is where I'm definitely the most active, I think, at EdTech Nerd. So I hope you can join and continue the conversation with me as we exit this webinar. So Kiki, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Absolutely. I'm Kiki Pressman. I am a curriculum developer with code.org, formerly of Thinkersmith. And like Brian, I also kind of got my education start all over the map. I have taught in middle schools, high schools, and I taught at the University of Oregon in their computer science department for about 4 years before I started my own nonprofit. My specialty is unplugged activities. That's where I got my start. But working with code.org, I've transitioned to their online team as well. And so now I develop their K-5 curriculum with both unplugged and online activities. I enjoy blogging and writing, and I have a YouTube channel called Kiki versus IT. Some of you might have seen me, but I really enjoy technology, and I enjoy the creativity and the problem solving that comes with it. So I'm just trying to infect others with that bug and see what happens.
So between Kiki and myself, I mean, we have many, many, many years of, teaching and computer science under our belts. So we're really excited to be the subject matter experts here today, being able to answer questions that you all have, but also share some of our information that we've learned as we've been doing this, from all the way from K all the way through higher education and beyond, which is great. So thank you again for joining us. And I know that you have something that you'd like to share with everyone, which I'm really excited to show as well. So go ahead and explain what you've done.
So, yeah, this is actually an announcement, I guess, because the book is just shipping tomorrow off of Amazon. I have written my first book on the subject of computer science education. I have co-authored it with Jane Krause, who is amazing. She does a lot of work with NC-WIT. So you'll see a lot of our book is very flavored with the feeling of equity and how to bring equity to your technology classroom. We talk a lot about dipping your toes in computer science as a new administrator or teacher when it comes to teaching computer science. We talk about great activities for the classroom, and it balances her very creative intellect with my off-the-wall wit. And it comes out with a very readable book, and it was a lot of fun to write. And I hear it's pretty great to read too. So,
well, I'm excited to read
now for pre-order.
I've actually already pre-ordered it. I went on as soon as you sent me this link, and I've already pre-ordered it. So it should be in the mail tomorrow, then, right?
Yeah, it should mail out tomorrow. So thank you.
That means I'll have it in 2 days, thanks to Amazon Prime, which is great. Awesome. So the first question that we kind of want to discuss, and Kiki, I'll let you kind of share a little bit too, to begin, is the question that a lot of people ask is, what is coding?
I think that that's a very good question, especially now, because it used to feel like a very clear-cut answer. It used to be writing programs, and you had to be very intelligent and learned in order to be able to attempt it. But we have tools now that really bring coding down to a nice distilled art form, and there's so many versions of it. But at the heart of it, it is putting an algorithm into another form. So figuring out how to solve a problem and coding that into a program that can be used to solve a task or solve a world problem or create art or make a game. But I think that's what coding means to me.
Yeah, and for me, I think, coding is, especially in our youngest grade levels, K through 5, found in most of our elementary schools, we're teaching more than just coding at this point. We're teaching, other skills that we're going to get into a little bit further, but it's not just learning the concepts of coding. It's learning a lot of other skill sets as well as they're going through the coding process. But coding is, for me, being able to be presented with a problem and being able to find a solution to be able to solve it using technology, or in some cases not. But, I think it's, for me, one of the biggest pieces for problem solving is actually going through the concepts of coding because of what it's teaching.
Absolutely. And it's a great entryway to computer science in general. And computer science is definitely a skill that leads you to better problem solving, helping you get through all sorts of types of problems.
Right. And it's the foundation, what we're teaching a lot of our students is the foundations of learning the computer science languages that will be happening. So coding is all encompassing. Yeah.
Right.
So the question is then, since we're teaching this, why should we be teaching this?
This one has actually been a little controversial lately, especially with the idea of putting little ones on a computer and thinking of coding as an online activity or on-computer activity. But really, like I was saying earlier, it's the hook, right? It's the thing that's going to grab attention and help people see, wow, I really could do this, and I could see myself doing this more. It's not that we want to turn out a bunch of coders, a bunch of people who are going to be computer scientists in their profession when they grow up. I mean, we definitely need some, but really we're trying to develop a different mentality around the things that are going to be needed for this 21st century world. And this is the way we get people to see that this is achievable and necessary.
I completely agree with you. So what we see, in a lot of pieces that came up, and you even briefly mentioned it, is preparing students for the workforce and what they're going to be experiencing when they leave, school. And so what I have up here on screen is the typical life cycle of a student. They start in elementary school, move to middle, move through high school, they graduate. In some cases, some students go to college, and some students with a skill set that prepares them for the real world will be able to move into that. And we're seeing a lot of that, especially in those students that are very proficient in computer science. And then they graduate. But then what we're seeing is that they go from, in this case, being college bound to being homebound. And this is a major concern for our students that are graduating, because they're moving into a workforce that is oversaturated. They are moving into a workforce that have very capable people moving into it. And there's really no differentiator for them in some cases. So for this case, coding is that differentiator. Every job that students are going to be going into, they're going to be experiencing some sort of computer science, or have the opportunity to move into some area of computer science within a job. Everything from the arts to music, to culinary, all aspects, there is some part of coding that can be used. And what we're seeing, and this is some statistics. Kiki, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I was just going to say, and what you said about can be used, I think that's just as important as if we were going to say must be used. Because even if you think about that culinary, that artist, that photographer, the more programming the more you're going to be able to do yourself instead of hiring out. Things like making apps to showcase what you do, or even making yourself a responsive website that people can dive in and learn more about what you're doing. To hire that out is pretty expensive, which is another reason it's great to be a computer scientist. But if you can do this stuff yourself, you're saving that money and giving yourself the opportunity to get ahead.
Yeah, I completely agree. And one of the statistics that you all have done at code.org is, in just 4 years, in the year 2020, we're going to go from 1.4 million jobs that will be available in the area of coding and computer science, which is incredible. That's just almost 3 years away at this point. So we're getting up to that. But the scary piece is only 0.4 million students are actually being prepared for that. So that's leaving us with a 1 million opening deficit for jobs, which really gives the opportunity for students to, take advantage of that, where we don't have to outsource this to other countries, to, other markets. We're doing this within our own area. And these are things, like you said, that will not only differentiate the student, but also save money, allow them to be creative in other ways beyond what we've seen. And it's opening up a whole new set of jobs that we have never even experienced yet. So we're preparing students for jobs that we won't, be seeing for the next 5 to 10 years after they graduate. And we just want them to have those foundations. So it's really important that we're preparing students with these skill sets.
Absolutely.
So one of the questions that we often see is, what do students learn through coding? And, students learn some very important skills as they go through coding. But I think some of the biggest ones, which are not even coding related, not learning a particular program or how to, code in a certain language, they're learning these skills that, we've been talking about for the last 16 years as 21st century skills. I've actually called them now essential skills to learning, because we are 16 years into the 21st century. So we need to get rid of that 21st century term. But these are all important skills that students need to learn. The 4 C's of 21st century skills: communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking and problem solving. We can't have students learning how to code in a classroom environment without them communicating with each other. They're working in small groups. They're working in large groups. They're going through and solving problems. That's a big piece, is the communication aspect. And television and media has done, I would say almost a disservice in a way to the perception of where coding occurs and how it looks. We're seeing it change a little bit by, us being able to see videos from code.org of what workplaces look like in Silicon Valley. But typical, media has shown us programmers are people with their headphones on, they're strapped to a computer, and they're not interacting with their environment whatsoever. And it's anything but the truth.
That's not
completely
what it was.
opposite. Right, I know. So, but for many people, they still have that perception of someone sitting quietly at a computer just working. And that's really not the case. In order for any project to be completed, there needs to be some communication involved. Then the next is collaboration, and obviously working together as a team to be able to accomplish those goals. Especially when you're coding, you need to collaborate with each other and ask to see, what skill set someone else has and what knowledge they have to be able to help solve that problem. Creativity, I think, is one of the most exciting pieces for me because I've always been a person into the arts. So finding creative outlets through coding is wonderful. And that can be done through programming music, digital storytelling, writing and having your robots like Dash and Dot being able to drive around and act out and tell stories or, act out a play. I think, those are some of the most important pieces. And when we can bring in that creativity, it unlocks that whole different part of the brain, that allows for absorbing that information and also explaining that information as well. So it's very brain-based also. And then critical thinking and problem solving, obviously. So, we can't actually complete a task without solving some of these problems. And not only problems that are app related, but also real world problems. So we want to think about global impact. We want to think about issues that are happening around our society that we can solve using computer science to possibly make that easier as well.
Absolutely. And there's also learning to learn, right? Which is, it encompasses all these as well. But in computer science, you have to form that love of actually learning to learn on your own or with little help because computer science moves so fast. There's new stuff all of the time. And so helping you form that ability to recognize that you can learn things on your own, that's one of the things that really will change your life.
Yeah, and one of the things, that we constantly say in our office, and it's become our phrase, especially in our education department at Wonder Workshop, is we learn to code and then we code to learn. So, it's taking it beyond just learning how to program, but then being able to apply what we've learned to make our learning even more successful and positive. So that's a really big piece. And when we are actually learning or when we're coding to learn, a lot of times teachers are concerned and saying that, we've given them a project and it's strictly built around coding. And the project that we gave them was they needed to explain a habitat and they had to have the gorilla, go through the jungle and try to find a banana. But one of the things that the students are beginning to learn when they're doing that is, okay, what does a gorilla look and sound like? So they're doing extra research beyond that. What is the environment that they actually live in? So what are they presented with? So they're going and doing other problems that they're solving as they're going through the actual problem that was originally presented to them.
Sorry, I was reading the chat. This is interesting conversation going on, and it's amazing how passionate these teachers are getting about bringing the stuff to their classroom and all the creative ways that they're doing that. So
yeah, and it's it's been something that we've seen grow over the past couple of years, and to be for both you and I in our different companies, really exciting, because this is something that we had to advocate for so long. And now it's becoming almost second nature. It's kind of what we've dreamed of, every school starting to do, but not every school has begun doing that. So one of the things that we want to ask is, what is the hour of code and why is it important for students to be participating?
This is something that we've been trying to get across since the inception of code.org. The Hour of Code was really code.org's first event. It's the thing that code.org put out after their major video to try to get buy-in for this idea that coding is necessary and it's not as hard as people think. And it's really just an ask. We're just asking that people try 1 hour of code. And yeah, it tends to be focused at schools and really elementary schools. But in reality, we're kind of putting out the ask for everybody. We want everyone to just give it a try 1 hour, and recognize that it is not this elite, difficult, geeky thing that only certain people can do, and it makes you uncool instantly. That's not the way that it is. It's fun, it's engaging, it allows you to share an experience with other people. It's like art, and it's art that you can share instantly on the internet out there in the web. And it's something that is absolutely achievable. So that's what the Hour of Code started as. And it's become more of a movement to have people kind of stand up and say, yes, I embrace this, or yes, we'll give it a try. And hey, look what my students did. And just be proud of that evolution that's happening. Prime Minister Trudeau tried some, and we got some nice video with that. So it really is spreading, and it is becoming something that's making quite a splash. Now, just being part of the crowd isn't necessarily the reason to participate, although it certainly is an inspiring reason. But really, it's to get over that idea, that feeling that it has passed you by. And I hear so often, especially from adults, they're clinging to this motto of, I'm not a tech person. It wasn't like that when I was growing up. I missed the boat. And more and more, instead of saying that with pride, people are starting to say that almost as if they're ashamed, like there's nothing they can do about it now. And this is a step to get them to be in the spot where they don't have to say that anymore. This is a step to get our teenagers to the place where they're ready for the job market that they're going to be hitting in 4 years or less. This is the spot for our middle schoolers to stand up and say, I'm not a geek just because I know how to use a computer, or maybe I am, but I'm proud of it. I'm not an outcast simply because I'm smart. And it's a place for our elementary schoolers to say, hey, I can learn on my own, and I don't have to shut down just because I haven't learned something. I don't have to think that I'm no good or that I'm stupid because I failed 5 times before getting it right on my 6th time. And it's really going to give those students then a leg up for the entire rest of their education career, because no matter what class they're doing, if they have computer science to help them, they're going to do better in that class than the kids that don't.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, and I think one of the biggest pieces for me has always been with Hour of Code is making it so friendly that it takes the fear away for teachers and students. And for many teachers, this is the first time that they're even interacting with computer science and coding. And for teachers that are just presenting it to their students, I urge you to try it yourself to see what the students are going through the process, because you will quickly learn that you too yourself can do it. That it's not scary. It's not something that only young children can do and figure out because they're the ones that grew up with the technology. You know, this, like you mentioned, this is something that everyone can do. And the other big piece for me that, you know, really resonates is grit and being able to, you know, fail forward and work through a lot of really tough problems and stick with it and see it to the end and not just give up and move on to the next activity. And Code.org and Hour of Code do a really nice job of walking you through with progression to do that. And we've built that same type of progression in the apps for Dash and Dot, where they're presented with challenges and it walks them through and progresses them through at a skill set that's a good pace for them to actually follow and makes it attainable, where they're not just presented with a problem and it says, here you go, here's a blank slate, figure it out on your own. So, you know, it's really important that we're providing them those instructions, but also giving them the opportunity to fail along the way and work through those failures. So that's one of my biggest pieces that I've enjoyed watching teachers and students alike use, you know, these different programs, because they're able to feel accomplished at the end and have a sense of, wow, I actually did this. And for some teachers, it's their first aha moment that, you know, hey, I can do this myself. And I'm really big on finding those aha moments for teachers. And for so many, it's been, you know, going through the code.org exercises. So you guys are doing such an awesome job, and it has become a movement, you know, and it's been something that everyone has slowly begun to embrace. And we're seeing, you know, a lot more. And just reading through these chat conversations, it's incredible to see, you know, all that they're doing and how busy they are from all grade levels. And really, for me, it was code.org that brought that to light for the first time when I was the director of ed tech at my school that I was at. So it's just been really exciting to follow this journey and be a part of Hour of Code, you know, all of these years now.
Thanks. Yes, it's been fun bringing it to you too.
Good. Well, you guys are up to great things, and we can't wait to see where they continue to go from here. Now, what are some of the struggles that schools face after the initial hour of code is completed?
There's a huge variety of ways to answer this question. I think the most common one we hear is that teachers kind of think that the computer science curriculum for K-12 is hour of code. And so they feel like their kids quickly outgrow it and they don't know what to do next. Fortunately, we have lots of solutions to that now. 5 years ago, when this was just kind of starting to be an idea and people were just starting to do work, there was not a whole lot you could do short of AP computer science classes in high school. But now so many people are coming up with great curriculum and Wonder Workshop with their robots and bringing not only this robotics element, but the curriculum element and, being able to build onto it with Legos, having code.org and all of we have an elementary school curriculum that is 4 years long, and we are just updating to have one that spans all 6 years, kindergarten through 5th grade. We also have a middle school curriculum that is in beta right now. We have a high school curriculum coming out, but then there are others. There's Tinker, and one of my personal younger favorites is the Foos. They've got a great platform. So there's stuff out there now that teachers can do. The other things we hear constantly are things like having low bandwidth in schools, equipment that just can't keep up. We have network teams that are a little too tight on the reins and won't let teachers take their students to certain websites. So there's definitely a lot of technology issues. And then the final issue that is probably one of the top three is time. Teachers are so heavily scheduled right now that they just don't feel like they have the time to bring a separate educational course to their students.
Yeah, and to carry on and follow up with that time thing, I'm also seeing, one of my biggest struggles as I'm out there and talking with school leadership and teachers is, professional development. So not only is it time, but it's also the time being provided for professional development. And a lot of cases, schools are investing money in product, and that's wonderful because you're giving them the resources that they need. But where they really need to be investing is the professional development that goes along with that. And especially for a new concept like computer science, teachers are just learning it for the first time. They are learning how to go through a lot of these programs. Finding the time to do it is a big part, for themselves to learn it, because oftentimes they have other responsibilities and things to do when they go home. They have lives beyond the classroom, and they need to be provided time to learn how to do this. So, speaking on behalf of teachers, I think a big part of it is school leadership finding time to give teachers to be able to learn it, whether it's on their own or having someone come in that can teach it to them to get them up to speed. And then, as you mentioned with time, finding time to fit it into their busy day. Not only do they have a curriculum that they have to follow, but they have standardized tests that they have to adhere to. So it's really busy for them to find great ways to fit it into the day. And that's one of actually the questions that we'll be getting to.
Great.
So how should school administration and leadership be involved in this? And when we went through the polls at the very beginning, I think we had 3 administrators on, and I'm hoping now that we have 243 plus people that have popped on now, we have more administrators. So if you're an administrator, definitely let us know in the chat window, because we would love to hear from you. But how should school administration and leadership be involved in the process of integrating computer science and coding?
They should absolutely be at the forefront of this. We see this has actually been one of the things that has blown me away since starting this whole thing. I've gone around, I've trained across the entire nation. I've trained hundreds and hundreds of teachers how to teach this curriculum. And I found that districts are so different, right? Some districts, you get commanded from the top, this is what you do, and everyone does it. Others, like here in Oregon, the teachers really have a lot of autonomy, and schools in and of themselves get to choose what happens. And so you have this huge disparity. And because of that, we really do need the administration to be on board and understand that this is something that's worth fighting for. It's worth leading the charge on, because like many other subjects like math, you can do this wrong. Like, you can poison a child's mind against this stuff simply by teaching this in a way that's unappealing, and it doesn't have to be that way. There's so much out there that's engaging and lovely, that if an administrator is really saying, here is the good stuff, let's get you trained, let's make sure this is happening well, they can inspire an entire district full of students to do something wonderful and be something wonderful. And if they're working in a district where the principals, the teachers have more autonomy, then at very least they should be cheerleaders. They should be standing by their teacher's side. And if there are, when there are those hard questions, like how are we going to afford this equipment? How are we going to do PD? They need to be able to ask those questions and then help the teachers find the answers to them. And rather than having that be a no, it really does need to be a opening of a conversation so that they can figure out how to solve it. Because all of those issues do have solutions. We have the stuff being brought to hundreds of districts and even several entire states. And they were able to solve these problems by working with their administration, working with the principals, working with the teachers, and in many cases, working with the students to find something that really enriches everybody's experience.
And you know, I think you bring up a really great point in, you know, having those administrators involved in that entire process from beginning to end, where you have said, you know, that we see it sometimes being grown organically from the bottom up, or we see it being pushed from the top down, and both can work wonderfully. You know, there isn't a wrong way to do it and implement it. An example of from the top down, which I think works really well, is Broward County, which is one of your, you know, original pilot schools, which is the county that I fortunately live in and, you know, get to work with that district quite often. But Superintendent Runcie has, you know, been a very big advocate and has been very vocal for the importance of computer science and coding within the district, and has brought opportunities to teachers and finding ways for them to find time throughout their day, but also find the funding. As teachers that are starting it from the bottom up, which is happening in many schools, that's a great way to do it as well. But it's getting your administrators to be present in the process. Invite them into the classroom. Let them see what the students are doing and learning, because again, you're learning this for the first time. We can't expect administration to completely understand this either. And if they're not having these conversations, this is new to them. They're not seeing it, but they're just seeing money being spent and not knowing what's being done. And, you know, in some cases, they're being spent on wonderful toys like, you know, Dash and Dot that are, I use the word toys in a very endearing term. They're really tools for learning. But for the administrator who's not familiar with it, they're spending money on what looks like toys. And we want to show them how they can actually be used in the classroom appropriately and authentically that tie to the curriculum. So invite your administrators in to see what's happening. Get them involved in the hour of code. Have them sit down and go through an hour. President Obama, you know, sat down with students and did his hour of code. You know, the leader of the United States of America sat down and did it. And I think that that's such a wonderful thing, and the example that our superintendents need to make as well. They're celebrities to students and teachers. Go in, work with the students, see what they're doing. So get involved as much as possible, and ask questions, because you're not able to learn unless you ask questions, especially as an administrator. So going in and trying to understand what a teacher's doing and ask them in a way that is very respectful. And obviously, as you know, administration you are, but these teachers are putting in their heart and soul into the lessons that they're creating for their students. So, you know, go in and ask how it's working, what can be better, what kind of resources they need, how can this be done differently, and how can this be replicated throughout the school? Because we have one or two teachers that are incredible in the schools that are doing this, and the rest of the school may not be doing it as actively. So really look into bringing those teachers as leaders and, you know, utilizing their experience and their knowledge to let it spread throughout, you know, the rest of the school. So just being present, I think, is a big part of it, but also asking questions from experts like us that are doing this on a daily basis and working with other schools to see how it's done, going out on social media and seeing what's being done. Just look up any of the hashtags. So look up code.org.
Go to Pinterest. Yeah.
Pinterest and teachers and what they're doing. It's incredible. Follow the companies that your students and teachers are using. So, you can follow at Wonder Workshop, which is our Twitter hashtag. You can follow at code.org or code.org for code.orgs and see pictures that people are tweeting out on a daily basis. Get involved in the chats that are out there. So we
have at Teach Code as well for teachers who specifically are looking for teacher ideas.
Yeah. So definitely go out there and look at those hashtags and see what's out there. Ask the teachers because they're the ones that are doing a lot of it. But if you have any hashtags that you really like, that you follow, please share them in the chat window so other people can follow those hashtags just to get the word out there. I know for us, we have our Wonder Workshop chat that we do at Wonder, or our hashtag Wonder Chat, where teachers are posting stuff to that. We have CSK8, which is another great one. So there's some really great hashtags. CS for All is a huge one. So, I think just going out there and doing that research is a really big part for the administrator as well.
Absolutely. I have one more thing I'd like to mention. When you talked about bringing the administrators in to watch in a classroom, there are other levels of that too that are wickedly successful. One of those is bringing in your local Congress people, politicians of all sorts, your mayor, any local celebrities, your radio station, your TV station, bringing them into the classroom and letting them see what's going on. It really does start to get infectious, and it helps people understand that this isn't just a cute little thing that happens. You're seeing second graders and third graders make programs that are clever and creative and cathartic. That really, it's amazing to see. And then on the other side, we have just bringing in the community. A lot of times, if the community is behind something, it helps in order to get the school behind something, because you have the community understanding and asking for it. A lot of times what I would do with my classrooms is we would host once a quarter, we would host a fundraiser at the pizza parlor, and we would take one of their rooms and set up laptops all throughout, and we'd have a show and tell where students could present their programs and people could see. They would come, they'd buy some pizza. So not only were we actually getting funds for the school, but we would also be getting support from the people who never really realized that this kind of thing was capable from elementary, middle, high school students.
Yeah, and another great thing is, with the fundraising stuff is, host a code.org hour of code, every month, and do, pizza sales or bake sale that's associated with that, and have people come in and, do their free hour of code, but then they're also able to obviously want to have snacks as they're working through this stuff. So, you can have a way to do some cross promotion as well and get some of these resources and tools in as well. And then you mentioned, getting the local Congress and television and radio involved. And the statistic, I believe, is still true that 9 out of 10 parents want their students to be experiencing computer science within the elementary school level and throughout schools. So by getting it out there and letting them know that this is something that your district is doing, it brings, publicity, notoriety, PR to your district and school, which then also leads to funding opportunities as well. So I think that that's a really big piece, is letting the public see and know that you are forward thinking and doing a lot of that stuff. Absolutely. So where does coding fit into a typical day at school? And for me, one of the models that we see a lot of is, especially this week, is students going to the computer lab to do their hour of code, and then that's it, because they don't know where else it can fit into the curriculum. And to me, that's wonderful, but it's also extremely scary, because coding can fit into anywhere within the curriculum. It covers math, science, social studies, art, music, reading, language arts, ELA, all of those areas, English as a second language, so all of these areas have computer science that can fit. And so where should it fit into a typical day? Well, if you have the ability and you are interested in doing it, have it fit as often as possible into your day. I'm not saying to do everything through coding, because sometimes we know that the best tool is still a piece of paper and a pencil. But in this case, coding can fit anywhere, and to not be afraid. And there are resources that are out there. Code.org has tons of resources that allow that. Wonder Workshop, we have tons of resources that authentically integrate, our robots into daily curriculums. So I think it's not where it can fit, it's when it can fit.
Yeah, I think that you could just as easily say, hey, where does art fit into a typical day of
right.
school? Where does reading fit into a typical day of school? And I think that we've done such a great job of siloing classes in so many institutions that we're kind of programmed to think, oh gosh, I don't have time for another thing. But in reality, once you get students up to speed as to how to use the tool, you really can fit it in just about anywhere. Now, the difficulty comes in some of those core classes like the reading and the math, where all the teachers in a district have to be on the exact same page of a lesson at the same time every single day. Those things, there really is a legitimate problem with how do I fit things in, because I'm going to be taken to task if I haven't kept them up to speed. And so there are certain things, there are clubs, there are after schools, but then a lot of these schools are the ones that are having their libraries turned into tech resources. And so they have a librarian/tech teacher that they then can find once a week that they can bring these things in. Certainly bringing them in as electives is a good place to start, but the problem is when students self-select, they perpetuate a stereotype in many cases. So it really is important to have some way of exposing all students. And so that's kind of why we want to integrate it into every class, so everybody has the chance to get in there 10,000 hours by the time they're in college, because that's the only way they're really going to feel like, oh, I belong in this when it's time to make a career decision. That said, anything is better than nothing as long as that anything is done well. So I would say that having a once a week tech classroom, even if it's an elective, is definitely a great place to start. And it's a great way to prove what can be done so that you can start to find support for more of it throughout your school day.
Great answer. Absolutely. So does it cost anything to implement coding into the school day? So I'll let you go ahead and start with this.
Thanks. Yes and no. I mean, certainly there's the cost of equipment if you don't already have machines for your classroom and you want to do more. There's the cost of keeping teachers perpetually trained, or making sure that your infrastructure can handle this. But in many cases, classrooms already have infrastructure. They already are trying the one-to-ones. In many cases, you can be getting grants, especially through the CS for All and some of this other funding that's coming available. This kind of thing is not necessarily a reason not to do it. Now, as far as adding the curriculum in, there are many really good free curriculum packages, and several of the people who provide those do free professional development, code.org included. So even our high school professional development right now is free. We don't charge for it. And it continues on throughout the year. There are multiple sessions for that. But more and more people are starting to follow that model because they understand that this is something that schools need and that teachers need. And I'm sure there will come a time where it's no longer absolutely free. So hop on it now. But even when it is no longer free, I believe that the resources will be there to help it blossom through funding from other sorts, even if it's the schools getting together, realizing that they need it, writing grants together, or going out and asking local businesses to help fund this. There are ways to get that to happen. And so net dollars and cents, no, I don't believe it costs anything. It costs some work, some dedication, and getting over some fears, which is probably more expensive to some people than almost anything, but it's an important step. So I highly recommend trying it.
Yeah, and it's a, a minimal cost for the outcome, because we're preparing students with all these skill sets. And if we want students to be prepared, it's going to cost something. And in this case, it may not necessarily always be money. It's going to be time, but it definitely is a resource that we can't go without. And this is something that we want to be providing all of our students to experience. The CS for all, the big piece in there is all. We want everyone to have an opportunity to experience this, but you can do that in a number of different ways. And as you said, it's going to cost money for the technology side of stuff. So purchasing, Dash and Dot for the classroom, purchasing devices to actually make this happen. But you can do, which you are an expert in, is unplugged activities as well that allow you to do many things for minimal dollars, going to the dollar store and buying some cups and a couple other things. So it really doesn't cost much. And I think that's one of the big pieces is don't let money be the fear, because parents are willing to help out in a lot of cases, especially since we know that 9 out of 10 parents want their children to experience this. There are other opportunities to find funding to be able to cover the cost. But don't let the money and cost piece be the deterrent for actually taking an attempt to do this, because there are tons of resources. And as you mentioned, curriculum is free for so many. And there's wonderful pieces of curricular items. And, for you all, the code.org trainings that you all do to schools is huge. And, something that's free for many educators to go to that they can learn a little bit more about this is something like an ed camp at their local school or, within their community. So, those are some free things that they can take a look at and, find those creative ways. And there's teachers that are willing to go out there and help you do that, and people that are willing to help you do that. And even companies like ourselves that we're more than happy to help find alternatives for some of the paid costs that it takes to acquire these resources.
Right. Yes. I couldn't agree more. We even have at code.org some lessons that don't take anything at all. We have a loops activity that you can do literally by standing and dancing in the classroom. It does take a little bit of time to kind of compile your list and figure out what you want to do. But again, if you're following the social media and you're just posting the question on Twitter or looking at what other people are doing on Pinterest, things will come to you quicker than you can find time to do them in your classroom.
Exactly. Yes. So we're running short on time. What resources? Oh, I know time flies.
I know.
What resources and funding opportunities are available to schools to continue beyond the hour code? So, as we're talking about this, there's a lot of different things that schools can do. And there's, things like Pledge Sense that's out there. Teachers pay teachers to be able to share your resources and bring money in to be able to, purchase more stuff for your classroom. There's a lot of different ways to find funding. Something as simple as a bake sale for your school can bring in funds to be able to take this on. Grants is a really big one. And it's very scary for teachers to go through the grant process, especially if it's their first time. They don't know if it fits what they're looking for. And there aren't that many out there that are computer science related. So when it comes to grant writing and acquiring grants, we have to be creative to do that, especially if we're trying to find funding to do, finding grants and funding to be able to bring these into our schools. So something that we did at Wonder Workshop is we've actually recognized and located a large majority of grants that are available that integrate coding and robotics into schools, where we've done the legwork. We've actually identified all of the grants that you can apply for. You can download the cheat sheet, which walks you through everything that you can fill in that's needed on those grant applications. Everything except pretty much, I think, the story that you have to write in as to why you want to have the funding for your school. But we've done all the hard work. We've identified, we've done the work for it, and you can download those resources and access them. You can find them at our teachers.makewonder site, so teachers.makewonder.com. And on there at the top, if you click on resources, you'll be able to go through and find information on grants. So thanks for throwing that in there, Kiki. But, grants don't have to be scary for teachers and for schools. And I highly encourage every teacher to actually try writing a grant of their own to learn the process, because you'll be surprised that it's not as scary as you think. You may not get it the first time around, so don't be disappointed. But it's definitely something that anyone can do. And we've tried to make that a little bit easier for everyone.
That's great. And of course, there are also things like Donors Choose and GoFundMe. Yep. And one of the things we've tried in several schools here in Oregon is having a tech partner with a classroom. So we'll go out to a business. In many cases, we'll connect a business and a school, and we'll say, hey, can you be their supporter? And then have them help with funding as well. But grants, once you're comfortable with grants, especially in this particular industry, you'll definitely find that there's a lot of stuff out there and that it can be a really powerful tool.
Absolutely. And they can use it beyond just for coding, and robotics. They can, find grants for pretty much anything. So don't be afraid to actually apply for it. So at this time, we want to go ahead and we have some questions that have been popping into our little question feed here. But also I want to mention that for attending today, you do receive 20% off of a Dashing Dot pack. You can click on the www.makewonder.com site, and we have the promo code there to receive 20% off. And this is valid from today until the 16th. And this is also available for people who are viewing afterwards in the recording until the 16th as well. So you'll want to take advantage of that. And thank you to Wonder Workshop for giving us that discount. So, just another way for you to bring that in. Now,
are they available to ship before Christmas?
Yes, they are. Absolutely. Yep. So you can go ahead and throw that in. Yeah. So place your order soon, Kiki, for all your family and friends.
Will do.
So we have some. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to flip over to the question sheet.
Perfect. So we're going to go through some of these, and you can continue to throw them into the question or into the chat window as well. So for the first one is, what coding language are you using in your classroom? And we're not currently in classrooms anymore, but what are some coding languages that can be used? Well, for me, I think one of the easiest ones to start out with is a block programming language that code.org uses, and we use at Wonder Workshop in our Blockly app, that allows students to learn the concepts of building a program very quickly and easily. You can go through a number of iterations of a program in a 45-minute classroom setting, and it prepares them for the computational thinking and the skills behind it, including vocabulary and just the understanding of what happens inside of a computer program. Then from there, there's a number of different progressions. So Kiki, since you focused a lot on that in your years, are there any languages that you find more schools using, and what is the ideal progression for some of these languages? Because I know that's a question that a lot of people ask.
Yeah, well, and I think that you started in a great place. The block-based programming, even some colleges like MIT and Harvard start their students in that block-based language. With code.org, Blockly, what we have on the back end, we've got JavaScript behind everything, and we even kind of let you view that if you want to click on that button when you're done writing your code. But JavaScript is great because it is very forgiving. It is also something that you can use to write really powerful stuff on the web. And so no matter what kind of computer you have, if you have access to the web, you can do a lot with JavaScript. It is also something that, from what I understand, you can do apps kind of almost natively now for Microsoft applications. So it really is powerful and simple, and there's so much resource because it's been around for a long time. So that's a great one. We hear a lot of people that do Python. It is not overly difficult either. It does, however, force you to have good technique, which is something that teachers like. It's almost like learning to drive with a stick. You learn this more detailed and technical way of writing your code so that when you go to other languages, they all seem a little bit easier. So those would probably be my top picks.
Wonderful. Thank you. So another question is, what robotic coding teaching tools or toys, for lack of a better term, do you suggest for that of the younger pre-K and K set? So obviously, working with Dash and Dot, I immediately jumped to these guys right here. So this is Dash, if you haven't seen Dash before. And then we have Dot over here as well. And they do an awesome job, teaching students some of the foundational ideas of computer science, such as problem solving. And one of the big things that we do with our youngest students, and I actually spent about 2 weeks ago, an entire day working with a kindergarten class. And me being a kindergarten teacher, I truly enjoy getting back into the classroom as often as I can. And I worked with the students in using Dash and Dot to be able to navigate their way through mazes using our Path app. So being able to understand progression, sequence, just using these robots. And there's some other great tools and resources that are out there as well, that, you know, I'm sure people want to share. We have someone listed in here. Bbot is another great one. There's a whole bunch of different toys that are out there. So if you have any favorite toys that you use, feel free to throw them into the chat window for other people to share. But Kiki, is there anything that you've come across that you really enjoy?
You know, Dot and Dash really are kind of my go-to. I think there's a lot of stuff out there that gives you simple basics and allows you to do things without a lot of complexity. But Dot and Dash really are a little more full-featured than that, and they let students really take their creativity to the next level. And you've got apps that make it really like as simple as remote control driving all the way up to more complicated programming. So that has always been one of my favorites. I guess always meaning as long as they've been out. We do play with a lot of robot toys, though, at code.org. And we have Osmos in the office, and we hear a lot of people like those. And the Bbot is one that comes up over and over,
Yep.
especially for a kindergarten classroom. It's very helpful for students that aren't necessarily getting into the whole realm of coding. They really, like I saw one teacher post in the chat earlier, when you're focusing on things like first, next, forward, backward, when those are your ideas of learning to code, then that's where something like that can shine.
Yeah, and you know, they all range in a very different number of prices. You know, some of them start at $49 and they move all the way up into the $200 or $300 range. So, but one of the things that you know, obviously working for the company, but I also speak internationally on Connected Toys, and if you see my office behind me in my house, you would see toys everywhere, because I have pretty much every single toy that's being thrown throughout here in the chat window, and including some that haven't yet even been shown to the world because they're still on Kickstarter. So that's one of my presentations, is I get to talk about this stuff and all the toys that are out there. But one of the things that I really like about Dash and Dot, and I have to say it, is that they progress with age. You know, so you start out at a pre-K level, and your 8th grade student can still be using it in 8th grade, which I think is great. And it progresses and follows them through the years. And, you know, the programs are built so they scaffold over top of each other, where they start out with something simple and then we begin to introduce different programming concepts. And there are some very complex programs that can be written using Blockly and Wonder to have Dash and Dot do tons of different things that, you know, we have high school students and college students even trying and using as well. So it's just one of those tools that can go throughout the years of a child's schooling experience. And I think that that's one of the best investments, is, you know, finding something that will continue to have use throughout the years for the students, rather than be used once and sit in a closet after you've gone through that activity. So, you know, it's just like apps that schools purchase. Is we're getting away from a lot of these, you know, 99 cents, no and throw apps. Once they've used them, they're done. And we're finding more ways to build in the creative parts. And, you know, being able to add in some of the creativity into Dash and Dot is one of the big things that allow it to continue to grow, because you can have it talk, you can have it dance, you can have it move, and add in a lot of those creative components where, you know, it goes beyond just what the app does. It's based on your imagination and what you can do with that. So one of the next questions is, are these coding languages free?
Some of them. Actually, the languages themselves are, by and large, free. It's the curriculum that can cost money. In fact, I'm not sure that I can think of a coding language these days that costs for the, I guess, compiler. Nothing really uses compilers anymore. But so yes, the languages are free. Many resources online are free. There are wikis. There are lots of documentation online for all these things. People will blog about how to teach these things. There are tons and tons and tons of free resources. Code.org's lessons are all free, and they will be as long as we're around. We will never charge for our lessons. I can say that because that's what I was told. A lot of times, even things that you need to purchase, like robots and other items, the curriculum that comes along with them is free. Your curriculum is free, right?
Yes, for most of it is. We have a lot of free resources. Then we also have a paid curriculum as well that go into subject-specific different challenges.
There are some that are quite good that are not free. They have free resources, starter resources, or kind of small introductions. So like Tinker is quite good, but it's not free. Scratch is free. My goodness, there's so many. But yes, you can find plenty of good free computer science resources. And some of it just starts with a Google search. That is middle school or high school or elementary school computer science resources free. And you'll see so many things pop up. It can almost be overwhelming, but again, post it to Twitter and you'll get so many people help clarify for you.
Thank you so much. So we're going to actually stay on and answer some more of these questions, but we're going to be shortly ending the recording as well. So with that said, I just want to say thank you, Kiki, for joining us. This has been, an awesome session just to have the conversation with you and being able to talk over the past couple of weeks and planning this out. I continue to hope that we have these conversations together and can partner up again in the future and do a lot of this stuff too, because as we see, we had over almost 300 people that actually participated today, and we'll have thousands of people that'll end up watching. This is something that's extremely important for teachers, and they're very curious about it as well. So to bring on someone like you who's doing this with Code.org has been really exciting for me because, I've used the resources through the years as well, too. So thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. This has been so much fun, just all of it. And I have had a great time talking to you. I've had a great time reading some of these chat comments, and I hope people keep in touch. Feel free to tweet me even after this and just ask me your questions. I'll get back to you, and watch some YouTube videos and see if we can answer your questions from here on out.
Yeah, for me, reaching me on Twitter is definitely the best way to do that, at EdTechNerd. I saw it get posted in here. Kiki, do you want to share yours out as well?
Yeah, I'm Kiki versus IT, and that's for all my social media. The VS is in between Kiki and IT with no spaces.
Got it. Perfect. Yeah, so we can continue the conversation online. And, if you haven't done it already, throw in your Twitter handles as well. So when we go back, we can add some of you, and you can add each other to continue the conversations.
Absolutely.
So with that said, being a part of EdWeb, we want to thank Wonder Workshop, which I get to be a part of every day and love, and Code.org for sponsoring this webinar. And again, after following this, you'll get your CE certificate, and you can go through, and if you join by phone and watching this recording, you can go through and take the quiz to be able to get your CE certificate. So don't forget to do that. And again, you can join our community where we will be continuing on this conversation. Also, this upcoming Thursday, we have our hashtag Wonder Chat, where we're talking about integrating and bringing coding and robotics to our youngest of students. So be sure to follow that hashtag on Thursday at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. So once again, we're going to thank everyone for attending. We're going to actually hang out here and answer some questions that have continued to pop in here, but we're going to go ahead and stop the recording. So thank you all for joining us today.